Library, as we know it, essentially is a place where we house books, but actually it is much more than that. And in fact, there are a number of large societal and civilization changes which happened because of libraries. Before printing press was there, books were a prized possession, and it was a knowledge, and it could be all written by hand. And it's well known and well described that actually all the texts which were there from ancient Greek and ancient Rome were actually taken away and housed in a library at Constantinople. And that became a resource, but it was also a treasure. And like all treasures, it was not shared. So it remained there. And when it remained there and it was not shared, it remained buried there for many, many years and centuries, and which is one of the reasons for the Dark Ages in Europe, because knowledge got stored in a building and it was never shared with anyone. Two things happened around that time. Firstly, there occurred a ransacking of Constantinople, and a lot of books from that library were transferred back into other centers of learning. But that was a small bit, because books could still not get reproduced. The larger part was development of printing press somewhere in 1440, when people started translating and printing the same text in larger numbers. So every book now had multiple copies. Before printing press, every book would have only one copy. In India, the knowledge was translated orally from one generation to another generation. But again, written texts came much later. And it's only after printing press that real explosion in terms of number of copies anything would have came up. Printing press is considered as the event which led to Renaissance or reawakening and new knowledge. In fact, it was not a new knowledge, it was old knowledge which was buried in some library with only single copy. And now it was new knowledge, because now same text could be reprinted, multiplied, and could explode across various centers of learning. And there were some people who read those texts, some people discovered things which were already there, and those ideas percolated and led to development in science, development in literature, development in mathematics, astronomy, and physics. So essentially, books are powerful. Knowledge is powerful. We can always keep knowledge locked in a cupboard, but now with technology, especially information technology, the dissemination has become even more larger, even more wider. We often say that students don't come to library. Honestly, the honest answer is information is now available outside libraries on digital sources. And I think that's why we are talking about transformation, how libraries could re-energize themselves from a repository of resources. And honestly, the responsibility is now to make those resources available outside the confines of a building to everyone who needs it. There is again a debate which goes on that, most knowledge and lot of texts are available to free for public. And a debate is that we often have certain pieces of knowledge or information which get bound by copyrights, restrictions of usage, pay-per-use usage, and people have to pay to access knowledge. So there's a group of scientists, educationalists, researchers, disruptists who believe it should not be so. Knowledge is knowledge, it should be free. There should not be any restriction that by economics the knowledge gets restricted. And I think that is where in our country we brought out a big concept of one nation, one subscription, that okay, it's country's responsibility to make a set of knowledge available to everyone. So I think it's important for us to think and ponder that when we are custodians of information and knowledge, we really are not custodians of information or knowledge, we are disseminators of knowledge and information. More and more individuals it reaches, it is better. More and more restrictions we have, it is worse. And when restrictions were a lot, it didn't do good for civilization. And when the restrictions were removed, it did lot of good for all of us, and that is essentially what caused birth of science, especially starting from 15th century onwards. So keeping that thought in mind, I think when we discuss, the focus should be on availability rather than on revenues. Focus should be on that everybody should have an access to it rather than restricting access. Focus should be on that how most things can be available to practically everyone rather than restricting them by cadre, grade pay, level of functionality of that individual, because innovations can come from anywhere. They may not come from the most learned ones. So these are my brief thoughts, and hopefully when we deliberate about transformation, one part of transformation is how we make these resources available to everyone without cost. Thank you.